1. It was a stormy night. I went to bed like normal, not a care in the world. Storms didn't really bother me, but that night, something woke me up. I could have sworn someone had been calling out my name. I blearily woke up, called out, "Hello?" and listened for a bit before dozing off again. It felt like my name was shouted right in my ear, and I shot up like a rocket, the hair on my arms standing on end. There was no one in my room, and I was freaked out. I scooted to the end of my bed, turned on my bedside lamp, and listened hard for whoever had said that. The old house was creaky as hell, and it was hard to even stand in one spot without something squeaking. There was a loud crash of breaking glass, and I screamed, leaping out of bed and sprinting downstairs. My dad met me in the hallway, woken up by my voice. "It's in my room," I gasped out, on the verge of tears. He ran upstairs and then ran back down to me. He started checking me over. I was confused as hell, and asked if he found it. He just asked if I was okay. Turns out a big old dead branch had broken off of the tree in front of our house. The wind threw it right through my window, skewering my pillow and the top of my mattress. Had I not woken up and moved away from the window, I absolutely would have been dead. 2. My dad and uncle were re-walling the inside of the hayloft with huge sheets of plywood. I was probably 11-ish at the time, but I had gotten it into my head that I could help. The plywood was easily twice as tall as I was, but I figured if I could keep it upright, I could scoot it along the ground. My dad and my uncle weren't paying much attention to me, so I tried pulling one of the 10-ish chunks of wood off the wall. Bad plan. The first board shifted and pushed the bottom of the other plywood further into the wall, making them all tip over toward me. I tripped backward and landed on my butt, looking up at this wall of wood tipping toward me. I was going to die, and I knew it. First instinct was to try to scramble away, but then I heard someone yell my name. The voice told me to lay down, lay as flat as I could. I did, thinking, "That's stupid, I'll be crushed." But trusting the voice, that sounded like an adult. The pile of plywood crashed over me, and I heard my dad shriek my name. That was scary in a different way. Lo and behold, I was unharmed. Well, pinned into place by plywood and a little scuffed up, but I wasn't dead. The plywood was long enough that the top of the sheets caught on a small pile of pallets behind me, leaving a tiny wedge of space that my body could barely fit inside. I couldn't move at all until my dad and uncle lifted the plywood and pulled me out. But the worst bruise of the day had been on my rear from tripping. I got yelled at for being careless, asked if I had a death wish, laying down like that in front of a pile of falling wood. I was super confused, kinda scared. 3. The following is part of the Mormon Missionary series. Sorry for the delay in updating you on my experiences. Nothing noteworthy happened for the next 2 months except the occasional nightmare where I would relive previous encounters I've had. The worst part about them is that I was fully aware that I was dreaming, but I had no control over what was happening, and all of my attempts to prevent or change what had happened were all for naught. After the remaining 2 weeks of the transfer with my companion from the previous post, I was relocated to a new area with a new companion who was actually companions with my last companion in the MTC, Missionary Training Center. Yes, I know that sounded really confusing, but if you ever served a mission, you'll understand. Now, this guy was from Texas, and extremely, let's say old-fashioned, and very superstitious. I won't lie, I enjoyed messing with him, and telling him my stories, but saying they were actually my dad's mission stories from when he served in Ireland in the 70s. But other than that, we got along great. As I said before, nothing really happened during those 6 weeks I was with him, and I was beginning to think I was finally rid of these beings harassing me all the time. I should have known better. At the transfer meeting when I got yet another new companion, I swear that I saw someone standing in the hedges just off the church property. Now the building is next to a middle school, so I figured it was probably just some kid trying to get out of the heat on lunch. But I blinked and the figure was gone. Without thinking, I said out loud, "Oh, you have got to be fucking kidding me." Almost immediately afterwards, there was nothing but silence. Everyone stopped what they were doing and talking and just stared at me as if I had just said the most vile thing in the entire universe. My new companion, 6 weeks into his mission, said to me, once we got back to the apartment, "Elder, you need to repent for what you said back at transfers." And I knew right then and there that this transfer was going to hate this guy. That very night, I awoke to see a shadow of a man standing at the foot of my bed. I couldn't see a face, but I knew that he was grinning at me, just from the atmosphere in the room. After mumbling under my breath, "Oh, fuck off, leave me alone already," my companion said, "You see him too?" I was dumbstruck, even though I said, "See who?" and tried to play it off as me just saying something as I was waking up from a dream. He didn't buy it. My companion was convinced that I was talking to the shadow and asked me why I invited him into our apartment. I told him I did no such thing. But from then on, he was convinced I was praying to the devil and intentionally inviting evil things into our home. I saw this figure every night for the first week, always around 2 a.m. and always at the foot of my bed. Then something peculiar started happening. The figure started appearing in front of my companion's bed, and would creep closer to him every night, finally ending up leaning over him with his face only a few inches from my companion's face. I will be honest, I found this rather satisfying to see. Finally, someone else is being tormented and it's not me. I let out a faint laugh, which had apparently woken up my companion, and he screamed bloody murder, and flailed his arms wildly in an attempt to get the shadow away from him. A laugh was heard, but not from me, from the shadow as it disappeared into nothingness. My companion jumped at me, put his hands around my throat, and started to strangle me while screaming, "What have you done?" I swiftly kicked him in the balls and threw him off of me. A cheap move, I know, but it was self-defense. I kicked him multiple times as hard as I could in the gut, and screamed at him, "It wasn't me, you asshole! If you ever touch me again, I will kill you, and they won't find your body." I grabbed him by his shirt and whispered into his ear, "You remember the part in the Book of Mormon where the Lamanites killed all the Nephite men and fed them to their wives? Touch me again and I will kill you and feed you to everyone at the next zone meeting. Understand?" As I was saying this, the 2 other missionaries we shared the 2-bedroom apartment with came bursting into the room and pulled me off my companion. I tried to say that it was in self-defense, but as I already had a bad reputation in the mission, they didn't believe me. I was called into the mission president's office again and asked to explain what had happened. I told him that I woke up to him strangling me, so I was only defending myself. I was told that this was my one warning, and if anything happens like this again, that I would be accompanying the assistants to the president's, APs, for a transfer, and if my attitude didn't improve, I'd be sent home. I told my mission president that I had barely unpacked from transfers, and I'm ready to go home whenever he wants me to. I was sick of this place. I wanted to go home just in the hopes that these things would stop harassing me. I would have done just about anything to know why this was happening to me. 4. This happened almost a year ago, and it hasn't fully gone away. So last year, around Thanksgiving, I was visiting my uncle and his family. His girlfriend, now wife, does paranormal work for a living, and my cousin and I expressed interest and curiosity. After dinner, she offered to bring us on a quick trip to a local cemetery to do a brief paranormal investigation. We hopped in the car and drove through this neighborhood that was built on Native American land. We got to the cemetery and started walking around. Now, I've gone to abandoned mental asylums that were super old and had my own experiences, so this quaint little cemetery wasn't really creeping me out, and I felt nothing. Still, I was respectful there, and when she started describing seeing and feeling things, I stayed quiet even though I felt nothing and saw nothing. When we got back in the car and started driving, her and her son, both claimed to be sensitive to the paranormal, said they thought something had come along in the car with us. Their detectors started beeping and stuff too. But we were driving under power lines, and to me it seemed like they were just measuring moving charges, because they were physically moving relative to the power lines. They got increasingly afraid and started even kind of arguing with each other about it, because she kept thinking it was gone, and her son kept saying it was still there. Eventually my cousin and I kinda looked at each other like, "You feel anything, dude?" and kinda laughed a little. I was getting annoyed, honestly, so I started saying things like, "If there's something in this car, just get the fuck out, seriously. You're just being annoying, and you have no power over anyone. Stop fucking with us and leave." And stuff like that. The activity did seem to die down, and I soon returned home. When I got home, I was alone with my cat. I went into the garage to get a beer, and I heard pronounced footsteps directly above me. I run upstairs and there's nothing there. Then I go back down to get the beer, and this time I hear even heavier and quick footsteps down the whole hall, and then hear our guest room door shut pretty hard. I run up there and my cat is stuck on the inside of the room. The way the door opens would make that impossible, meowing pretty loud. I open the door and my cat bolts out of the room and is obviously terrified. I speak into the room and say, "You don't have permission to fuck with me or my cat. Get out of my motherfucking house." And there was no more activity that night. The rest of the week that I was visiting home, I felt strange sensations of things touching me at night. When I was reading in my bedroom, it was a religious text. The lights went out exactly when I read the word GD. When I would try to sleep, there were these disgusting images popping into my head that felt extremely intrusive, so I literally slept with the lights on the rest of the time there. When I got back to college, I assumed it would stop, and that it was just odd. It didn't. In my apartment, I saw a shadow figure thing in my bedroom. I woke up with scratches on my fingers, burns on my hands, scratches on my neck. My other roommates started feeling it too. I also had some strange positive experiences as well, and all of this activity continued for the rest of the school year. Things died down in the summer. I graduated college, and I moved to another apartment with my buddy. Even in this new apartment, some strange things have been happening to me. I still feel like something is clinging to me, draining my energy, making me anxious and antisocial, poking me and scratching me at night in my bed. Anyone know what the fuck is going on here? Sorry for the long story, I actually left a fair amount out. Edit. Maybe I should have included some of this, but since we got to the new apartment, I have started getting more accustomed to a lot of the negative feelings, the anxiety and strange feeling of being watched. Also, in the old apartment, things started going missing all the time. Big things too, that would be difficult to hide or steal. Probably lost like a dozen different items over the course of a month. And I go to school like 300 plus miles from where I live, if that matters. Since I've moved, I started trying to get my sense of humor back about it. And now my roommate has been hearing things at night. Literally can't sleep until the sun rises. And it's starting to affect him getting to class on time. I'm concerned because he isn't quite as strong mentally, and I think it's starting to get him pretty bad now. I also became more religious during the experience, and started noticing odd positive, like paranormal feelings, mixed in with the negative experiences as well. 5. Where to begin with this? Actually, there is no proper way to begin this. I guess I'll just start with saying that this is my first time I've ever posted a scary story on a Reddit forum. I like to watch That Creepy Readings YouTube channel, which features a lot of the Let's Not Meet stories and other wacky stories that are always fun to watch and give yourself a good scare, especially if you are home alone, midnight, or about to go to sleep, or all three. I wanted to post this story for some time, but I never knew which forum to post it on due to the content of this story. I was unsure if I could post it on the Let's Not Meet forum since it was more paranormal, if anything. So I ended up putting it on here. But I digress. I will recount this event in my life that to this day gives me chills, and I cannot explain. So here's how my story begins. Let's go back in time and imagine a 4 to 5-year-old boy with brown hair and brown eyes. This innocent young boy you see so clearly in your head is me. I guess you could say I was your typical 5-year-old kid. I lived in a small town that no one has ever heard of, which resided in a small state no one really knows about or gives a damn about, unless you look really closely on a map. Around my childhood years of 2 to 7, I lived in a condo with my family, my mother, father, and older brother, who was about 6 years older than me. We had lived in this house for a long time, and our entire family was religious. My mother and father had both had creepy stuff happen to them when they were children, so they were strong believers in the paranormal. I, on the other hand, didn't understand much at that time, so I could not logically process anything out of my simplified thinking. That is, until a certain day. I don't remember what season it was or the exact date, but if I were to make an educated guess, I'd say this happened maybe late spring or the beginning of summer. It was around 9 at night, and my parents told me to get ready for bed. Now let me try and give as much detail as possible as to the setup of this condo. My family condo was one of 3. It was one building, but how it was set up in this condo neighborhood was that it was split into 3 different houses that were conjoined side by side. Ours was the one in the middle. When you entered our condo through the front door, to the left of you was the living room and the kitchen right behind it, and to your right was the stair leading up to the bedrooms and an upstairs bathroom. When you walk up the top of the stairs and you turn your head slightly to the left, you have the master bedroom where my parents sleep. You turn your head to the left with your shoulder facing you, and you have the bathroom with 2 doors, one in the hallway and one in the master bedroom. I should also mention that this is a small hallway, not some long, stretching one. All the rooms were very close to each other. If you were to turn your head all the way around, you could see my bedroom, where I shared a bunk bed with my older brother. I always slept on the bottom and he slept on the top, and how the bunk bed was arranged was that if I were to crawl to the foot of my bed, I could look out and see everyone who was coming up the stairs. Now, with all the details out of the way, I'll get back to where I was. So I was getting ready for bed. It was 9 o'clock at night, or at least around that time. Since I was simply a 5-year-old, I didn't have to do much to get ready for bed. The schedule was brush my teeth, go empty my bladder if I had to, and put my pajamas on. For some reason that night, it didn't take me as long as it usually would to get ready for bed. I decided to crawl into bed early while I waited for my brother to come to bed as well. The hallway lights were on upstairs, so I couldn't really fall asleep. So I waited there, both bored but patient. I just lay there in my bed. All other lights are off besides the hallway lights, so I could see perfectly fine in my room. I waited what seemed like hours to me for my brother, or at least anyone, to come upstairs. I got my wish. Just not the visitor I was expecting. I'm sitting in my bed with my eyes closed when all of a sudden, I hear footsteps coming up the stairs. My eyes sprang open immediately. and I crawled to the foot of my bed to see who it was. And sure enough, it was my dad coming up the stairs. I called out his name in excitement. "Hey, Dad!" He stops, one step away from being at the top of the stair. He slowly turns his head in my direction and just stares at me. No evil laughter or sinister smile you'd expect in a horror film. Nothing of that sort. No, he just stares directly into my eyes. No, my soul, with a blank face, no emotion whatsoever. Not even blinking, nothing. At this point, I'm a little confused and call out to him again. "Dad?" No response. At this point, I just shrug my shoulders and lay back in bed. I peeked out there one more time to see if he was still there. And he was. Not even moving a fucking muscle, he was still staring at me. So I laid back down a third time and let a few minutes pass by before I would look. And when I did decide to look again, he was gone. Gone. As if he had never been there in the first place. I was so confused, not really scared because the whole situation didn't make sense to my 5-year-old brain. I fell asleep after that, and a good 20 minutes later, I woke up to the sound of footsteps coming up the stairs again. It was my brother this time, and he was coming upstairs to get ready for bed. He turned the light on in our room. He saw me sitting there and said, "Hey." As he was doing that, I was thinking to myself, maybe that he would know why my dad was acting so weird, so I asked him in a questioning tone, "Hey, Alex." He responds back, "Yeah?" I proceeded with my question. Why was Dad staring at me at the top of the staircase? He looked confused at me. What? How could he not understand what I was asking about? Did he not notice Dad was gone when they were downstairs? I asked again, why was Dad staring at me when he came up here? He responded with an answer, one that gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. "Dude, what are you talking about? Dad has been downstairs the whole time." These words resonated within my head. I could not come to any logical conclusion about what just happened. I was mortified, scared. After all that, the only thing I could think about was sleeping and forgetting the whole thing. It's 2016 and I'm 19 now. To this day, I've tried to find every rational explanation as to what happened that night. My first thought was that I was actually sleeping, and that it was all just a dream. Now I've been trying to dismiss that night as simply a dream for years, and there are some things that just don't fit. So I have put that point to rest. The second is that my brother and Dad were playing some sort of prank on me. But that was also crossed out because I can tell when my brother is lying or not. But when he spoke to me, there was no comedic tone in his voice, just confusion. To this day, this specific night creeps me out whenever I think about it. Perhaps sharing this story with others will help shed some new perspective on this experience. One thing is for sure, I don't leave my bedroom door open anymore when I'm going to sleep. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here. And thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 21. Thank you to everyone for allowing me to use their stories. That story there, earlier in the video about the voices waking you up while you were sleeping, kind of reminds me of what happened after my mother passed away. I think I've spoken about that before though. Although in that case it was never to save my life or anything, I think it was just to get me up for work. Which was actually quite cruel when you think about it. She knew how much I hated that place. You guys should be getting this on Friday, so I'm still trying to put together a Saturday video. I've got a few TIFUs, I need to get a couple more. I'm sure I'll work something out though. I've got a few days as of recording, this is Wednesday. So plenty of time to come up with extra stories. And I think I'm just going to have to make this a short outro because as I mentioned in the previous video, I'm recording this on the same day. I didn't get as much sleep as I should have, and I'm awful tired. So I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, Thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.